Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson is the UFC's greatest what-if. On one side, Nurmagomedov, the Eagle, undefeated at 28-0, dominating everyone who dared to wrestle him. On the other, Ferguson, the boogeyman, riding a brutal 12-fight win streak, cutting through opponents like a storm. They weren't just top dogs. They were bloodthirsty rivals. Fans begged for their fight for almost half a decade. And the UFC tried not once, not twice, but 5 times. Each time, something went wrong. This wasn't just bad luck or fighters' mistakes, it felt like the fight was cursed. But what if it had actually happened? Who would have won? That's what we're here to find out. Because this video isn't just a fight breakdown. It's the full story of every canceled bout, every peak moment, and the chaos that followed. But to understand how we got here, we have to rewind the tape all the way back to when Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov were just two hungry lightweights climbing the same ladder. It was the year 2011 when Tony "El Kooky" Ferguson made his debut in the UFC as the Ultimate Fighter. He had a long history of wrestling, which made it easier for him to enter the MMA scene. In just a few years of starting his career, Ferguson had already beaten up big names like Mike Rio, Danny Castillo, and Josh Thompson. By mid-2015, Ferguson had a record of 18-3 overall and 8-1 in the UFC, riding a 6-fight win streak. With footwork faster than thought, his light-speed movement made him a fan favorite. While Ferguson was smashing every opponent in his path, another lightweight was making waves, Khabib Nurmagomedov, known to the world as the Eagle. At just 23 years old, the Dagestani maestro was mauling his opponents. Coming from a region renowned for producing elite fighters, he was the perfect blend of sambo, freestyle, and pressure wrestling. His signature double-leg takedowns often caught rivals off guard, leaving them no room to recover. Khabib started his UFC career in early 2012, and by 2015 he was still undefeated. Securing an overall 22-0 with a 6-0 UFC record, he was ranked number 1, third in the lightweight division. His smothering wrestling made him a rising star. Seeing both the lightweights' records and fan following, matchmakers decided to schedule their first match on December 11th, 2015 for the Ultimate Fighter 22's finale. Fans were hyped, punters had picked their choices, and both fighters looked more than ready. But just weeks before the main event, everything went south. On October the 29th, Khabib withdrew from the fight due to an injury. While sparring in Dagestan, Khabib went for a takedown defense when he felt a sharp pain. He'd fractured a rib. UFC didn't wait for Khabib to recover and reschedule this fight. Instead, they replaced Khabib with Edson Barboza to fight with. As El Kooky said, he didn't change his game plan just because the opponent he trained hard for was replaced. He got in the octagon with just one goal, to dismantle Barboza, and he clearly did. Bloodthirsty Ferguson went on to throw vulture hooks on Barboza and had him down in round 2 via Darcy choke. In that fight, Ferguson didn't just earn Performance of the Night, but extended his win streak to 7, elevating his ranking to number 4th in the lightweight division. Meanwhile, Khabib was still sitting at number 2 with a spotless 22-0 record. But after 18 months on the sidelines and back-to-back injuries, the doubts were creeping in. And after what Ferguson did to Barboza, fans were thinking one thing: if Khabib stepped into the cage with Tony, he'd hit the canvas in round 1, because no Khabib could outrun Ferguson's pace. Around the same time, Conor McGregor, the Irishman, was ruling the featherweight division. He had just won the title and was now planning to move to lightweight in pursuit of the 155-pound belt. His dramatic rise, combined with the brewing rivalry between Ferguson and Khabib, created uncertainty around Rafael dos Anjos' title defense. That pressure indirectly pushed the UFC to book another Khabib versus Ferguson fight as a title eliminator to determine the true number 1 contender. Just 2 months after the first cancellation, the UFC scheduled their second fight for April 16, 2016. Both fighters were hyped and ready to settle the score. Khabib was healing from his rib injury and had been sighted in Dagestan and AKA, mainly working on his cardio, and had cut off weight. While Ferguson was already considered to be reaching his prime, he was seen training hard on defense. With just 11 days remaining in the main event, everything came crashing down. Ferguson was forced to withdraw from the fight due to a lung issue. During a pre-fight medical, he was diagnosed with fluid and blood in his lungs. Although Ferguson claimed it wasn't life-threatening, it was wise to stay away from fighting. As a result, Ferguson was replaced by Daryl Horcher. On April 16th, Khabib fought against Horcher. From the very first second, the results were predictable. Horcher lacked the experience to challenge Khabib's grappling. So, in the seconds round, Khabib won via ground and pound. With this win, Khabib marked his return to the octagon after 728 days. While it seemed like the Eagle was back in the game, Ferguson was building a strong comeback after his illness. On July 13th, 2016, he faced Lando Vannata, whom he finished in the second round with his famous Darce choke. Then in November, he fought against Rafael dos Anjos, ex-lightweight champion, and won via unanimous decision after landing 199 significant strikes. Now, both the fighters were in their best forms and had demanded a third matchup several times, with rumors that Ferguson demanded the UFC for a raise, which obviously got denied, but Khabib made an offer. If the UFC don't want to pay you, I'll pay you $200,000 extra on your purse. Let's make this fight. Now you have no excuse. This time, it wasn't just the fans demanding the fight. Both Khabib and Ferguson were all in, hungry to settle the score and dismantle each other. UFC finally gave in to the pressure and announced the third booking of Khabib versus Ferguson. It was set for March 4th as the co-main event of UFC 209, and this time the interim lightweight title was on the line. With Ferguson riding an electrifying 9-fight win streak and Khabib standing tall at 24-0, the stage was finally set. The hype wasn't just noise, fans were buzzing, UFC's PvP was rising, and everything pointed to a legendary showdown. Ferguson was in his prime, training like a madman in Southern California with Eddie Bravo. He was working day and night to beef up his jiu-jitsu and counter Khabib's ground game with spinning elbows. Meanwhile, Khabib was finally free of his injury woes and was prepping in San Jose. Learning from past slip-ups, his team kept a tight leash on his weight cut. On paper, it was the perfect clash, two unstoppable forces on a collision course. But just when the stars seemed to align, fate stepped in once again. What should have been the biggest fight in UFC history began to look like a cursed rivalry that would haunt the sport for years to come. On March 3rd, just hours before the weigh-ins, Khabib was rushed to the hospital. His weight cut went haywire, leaving him dehydrated and in rough shape. Doctors at Sunrise Hospital in Vegas checked him out and said there was no way he could fight. CEO Dana White ripped into Khabib's camp for going rogue.
He got within 6 pounds and was in really rough shape. So he's gonna have to take some time to recover from this weight cut, and then I don't know what to do.
Unlike previous cancellations, this time there was no backup plan, no last-minute opponent. Therefore, Ferguson, who made it to 154.5 pounds solely for this fight, was now left high and dry. But he didn't let the setback break him. Instead, he redirected the momentum. By October 2017, he stepped into the octagon against Kevin Lee for the interim lightweight title. And in the third round, Tony did what Tony does, locked in a triangle choke and claimed the belt. Meanwhile, Khabib's reputation took a beating. Haters, especially McGregor, charged up against Khabib on Twitter. He vanished from the cage for nearly a year, focusing on fixing the one thing that kept haunting him, his weight cut. Till now, the Ferguson-Khabib fight had faced 3 cancellations. Khabib's ribs in 2015, Ferguson's lungs in 2016, and now Khabib's weight cut in 2017. It felt like the MMA gods were trolling, and fate still had one last punchline ready. Conor McGregor was still sidelined, pursuing a boxing match with Floyd Mayweather, and being busy due to the birth of his child. The Irishman had no plans of coming back to lightweight for the time being. So the UFC decided to have Ferguson face Nurmagomedov at UFC 223. The winner of the bout would be declared the undisputed lightweight champion, with McGregor's belt being vacated. The fight was scheduled for April 7th, 2018 in New York. And unlike past cancellations, both lightweights came in ready, no excuses, no shortcuts. One was defending his interim belt, the other fighting to preserve an undefeated legacy.
I want to fight people that actually want to sit there and fight. I'm not going to beg somebody to go there and fight.
It wasn't just the heat between the lightweights or the fans' obsession that set the stage for their fourth scheduled clash. The stakes were high because both fighters were on historic runs, Khabib's 25-0 record and Ferguson's 10-fight win streak. If everything went to plan, it would be the most watched fight of the decade, if not the century. But in MMA, nothing's guaranteed until the cage door closes. On April 1st, just 6 days before the fight night, El Kukui was forced to pull out of the fight when he suffered a serious knee injury. While promoting the fight at some TV studio, he tripped over a wire and tore his LCL ligament, which required urgent surgery. This was the last thing fans were expecting to hear. Initially, nobody believed it cause it was April 1st and everybody thought it was some April Fool joke. But Ferguson's team confirmed it was true. Khabib was then expected to face featherweight champion Max Holloway. Unfortunately, Holloway couldn't compete due to weight issues, so Khabib eventually faced Al Iaquinta on 24 hours notice and won the fight by unanimous decision and became the lightweight champion. To be honest, this fight was less competitive than expected, but Iaquinta's striking exposed the Eagles' stand-up limitations, fueling speculation about a Ferguson matchup. Rather than rescheduling the fight with Ferguson, UFC decided to put Khabib in a fight against McGregor that October. After a heated bout, Khabib won the fight via neck crank submission in round 4, but just a few minutes later he got suspended for charging up on McGregor's corner. However, Khabib's iconic win and suspension weren't the craziest part of the day. El Kukui made a comeback to action on the same night when he defeated Anthony Pettis. For a whole year, Khabib and Ferguson kept clearing out the division. Khabib stretched his record to a perfect 28-0 after choking out Dustin Poirier at UFC 242, cementing himself as the undisputed champ. Ferguson, on the other hand, finished Donald Cerrone, extending his streak to 12-0, which clearly made him #1 contender for the title. Meanwhile, Conor McGregor was on the sidelines. No fights, just legal headlines. Rising stars like Justin Gaethje were making waves, but the division needed one fight to bring order to the chaos. So in November 2019, the UFC finally pulled the trigger. Khabib vs. Ferguson set for April 18th, 2020 at Barclays Center. Hype was sky high. Khabib's manager even joked, "5th time's the charm." Before that charm had a chance to work, everything shat down. COVID-19 swept across the world, NBA events got canceled, cities locked down, and for the 5th time, this cursed fight fell apart. What if these fights actually happened? If Ferguson and Nurmagomedov had fought in 2015, 2016, or even 2017, the outcome might have been very different. Back then, Tony was in peak form, bloodthirsty, unpredictable, and always moving forward with elbows flying. He looked like the one man who could break Khabib's streak. But as time passed, things began to shift. By 2019 and 2020, Ferguson was still a warrior, but signs of wear and tear started showing. Back-to-back injuries slowed him down. Family and mental health issues became harder to ignore. Meanwhile, Khabib only got better. He became more polished, more focused, and even harder to beat. When the pandemic hit in 2020, it shut everything down, including their final shot at making the fight happen. Khabib took retirement from the sport at 29-0 with his legacy untouched, while Tony kept fighting even when UFC wanted him to retire. With 7 straight losses, the man once feared as the boogeyman lost the shine that made him special. So who would have won? Maybe both, just in different timelines. Khabib stayed perfect. Tony kept pushing through even when it cost him.